If you're a business owner who has ever done a little bit of research about how to market yourself online with social media, one thing that you've probably heard over and over is to give value in your content. But sometimes I feel like we hear that so much that we're like, what does that even mean anyway? Like, what does it really mean to make content that is actually valuable and that's actually going to end in an impact and end in results for my business, right? When it comes to the way that I'm showing up online. And so I really wanted to talk about in this video, like what value even is anyway, when we're talking about content and how we can make sure that our content is actually valuable. The first thing that I wanted to go over here is almost like go back to this phrase of making your content valuable. And let's rephrase it because I really like to think about it instead of leading with value in my content. So instead of thinking to myself, when I'm making content, whether either on Instagram or on YouTube or literally anywhere else, instead of thinking like, oh, I need to make sure like my content has value, like how can I make my content have this value that people talk about, right? And instead, I like to think about how can I lead with value in my content? I think this is a really important shift for a few different reasons. Number one, it gives you a reason why your content has value. It gives you something to go back to say, okay, I'm leading with value with my content and it's gonna lead to this destination for the people who are watching my content instead of just giving out free value and having no idea how it fits into your strategy. So when you are giving or leading with value, it's really alluding to like your content at the end of the day, you are deciding and making a decision to lead with free value and to give away free, valuable information, strategy, tips, inspiration, whatever it is, in order to see organic conversions for your business, right? Like you've decided instead of using other types of marketing strategies that you would like to basically give and serve before you even ask people for their credit card, right? And when you think about it this way, it also helps you to see like your content, it's not just the point of it isn't just to give away free value, but the point of it and your overall marketing strategy is to build your credibility, to build an audience, to build the like, know, and trust factor with your audience, and to really just genuinely serve before you ever ask them for a sale. And I also think this gives you a lot of clarity on, again, just like instead of thinking about how can I like piece together like, oh, here's like a tidbit here or a tidbit here, it's like, no, like your content is literally one of the top of funnel things for your business or that is organically bringing people into your business. And the way you want to do that is by genuinely serving and giving away free valuable information and leading with that at the top of the funnel that's going to lead into all the other things. I think that gives a lot of clarity to then what is that value, because that value needs to relate to your ideal client, needs to relate to your paid offers, right? And so on from there. Okay, so how do we actually create content that has value? I have 4 main tips here when it comes to actually including value, like 4 practical examples of like what you can do to actually include value in your content. Number 1 is you give practical advice, and you do not need to be an education type business in order to implement this. In fact, I've been doing this since I started my business 9 years ago. And when I started 9 years ago, I started as a photographer. And this is one of the main things I did. I was just giving away free practical advice about how to plan a wedding day because I did a lot of weddings. And another example could be like giving away free practical advice would be things like, you know, maybe you're a hairstylist and you're teaching people how to do different hairstyles or how to curl your hair, right? Like leading with value in that way. And then they can book you for your services if they're like, well, I don't want to have to do that myself, right? And so there's just a lot of ways, again, you can do this. Basically just giving away like practical step-by-step tutorials, tips on how to do something as it relates to your niche or your offers. Number 2 is to inspire your audience. And I think there's really 2 big ways to do this here. Number 1 is to share your own journey as you walk through it and really just being transparent and vulnerable as you're comfortable with the things you're experiencing, the things, you know, the wins you have, the struggles you have. And I really believe like, you know, when we think about leaders in an industry and the people that we look up to, the people we look up to the most are willing to be vulnerable, right? They're willing to go there there and willing to share different things about them and their journey and their story, whether as it relates to their personal life or even as it relates more so to their business, right? Another thing I think about is sharing the journeys and inspiring your potential clients with your past customers. So sharing their wins and their transformations and ultimately what you have provided and helped them with, and incorporating that literally into your content and really just celebrating your own customers. Another way you can do this in sharing inspiration is sharing the stories of others in your industry. So this could even be highlighting those either who are in your same niche or people who have like adjoining niches where you might have the same audience, but ultimately you sell very different offers, and where you can collaborate together and really help to inspire each other's audiences. Number 3 is to be relatable. So this is where you can bring in like humor, really relatability, the idea of like, I've been there too, right? And where you're able to share a little bit of like, hey, I'm a human, like, here's some ways that either like I can make you laugh or that we can, relate together on something that's maybe a little bit more of a deeper issue, right? And obviously this doesn't mean you have to share everything about yourself or your deepest struggles, but just thinking about like as it more so relates to your business and your niche. What are the things that they're struggling with? What are the things that they would find funny? What are the things that you can poke a little fun at, right? And have a little humor with? And that can be a really great way to provide value by really just entertaining your audience. Okay, so those first 3 really fell under the main categories that I teach a lot when it comes to like topics for content, which is to educate, inspire, or entertain. But this 4th one is kind of another one that I think it could kind of fall in those categories, but I think it's another one that's very impactful that almost doesn't fall in one of those categories. And it's simply to make them think. Like, how can you make them stop and think with a statement, with an interesting fact, with maybe something that's just very thought-provoking that can ultimately help to make them think about things on a deeper level or just think about things as it relates to your business, right? So an example of this that I thought of recently that I had written down that as I was thinking about like my coaching programs and what's something that I could communicate to my audience, something that I thought was super thought-provoking was imagine not growing a business because you're too busy watching someone else do it. And instead imagine like where you could be in 6 months, a year, 3 years from now if you decide to start now. And that's just something, it's like doesn't necessarily fall in those other categories. It could maybe be inspirational, but I think it's just the idea of like, how can you make them stop and think? And it's something that is probably going to be on their mind for the rest of the day, might make them take action on something that they've been putting off, right? And simply being that leader and really helping them to think about things in a different way, I think is also a great way to lead with value in your content. I also wanted to throw in here, if you want to see in action how I apply these different ideas of how to lead with value, go ahead and grab our 10 free Reels ideas. So it's 10 free Reels templates of like exact text boxes to use, the exact ideas, and you can really see what I'm talking about here when I talk about leading with value and practically what that looks like specifically with Instagram Reels. So if you want 10 Reels ideas that you can literally use in the next few weeks, we'll have a link right in the description where you can go ahead and download that. Okay, so within those different like kinds of ways you can lead with value in your content, one thing that is very, very, very important to think about, especially in content that's more of your like cold audience content or content that you're leading with in your online marketing, is you need to work backwards, okay? And what I mean by this is think about what paid offers are you ultimately trying to sell to the audience that you're trying to reach, and make sure that your content, so that top of funnel content, aligns with that. If it doesn't, you're going to be attracting an audience of people who literally do not care about your content, right? And obviously it's going to be different depending on what platform you're using, what kind of content on the platform you're making. But in general, if it's cold audience content, which means it generally reaches a cold audience, new people, this would be like Instagram Reels, this would be like YouTube videos, right? You want to make sure that that content aligns with your business niche. So you're attracting people who actually are going to care about the paid offer offers that you offer within that niche, right? Because it aligns and it's the same person that you're trying to attract in your content that you're trying to then sell paid offers to. And just making sure that those two things are aligned. If they are not, you're gonna grow an audience of people who ultimately are not gonna buy from you. So just make sure that your content, your leading content, the content that you're leading with value in, and what value you put in that content is aligned with your niche. There's so many things I love about personal branding, and I love about, you can share about things outside of your niche within your content, right? But it has to be done more so with warm audience content. Because if you're leading with, what you ate for breakfast that day or your walk you went on with cold audience content, you're frequently probably going to attract people who don't care about your niche, whatever it is. And so that can be a great thing to share in something like in an email to your email list or on your Instagram stories, but probably not something you're gonna share in your YouTube videos that you're trying to use to grow your business niche, or in Instagram Reels on your Instagram account, right? And so just make sure that those two things align. That is really important. So when it comes to those topics I shared, make sure you're thinking more so topics that relate back to your business and your niche and what you're ultimately trying to sell. If you haven't before, I would love to invite you to follow me on Instagram at Stephanie Lynn Case. The link will be in the description. I would love to hang out there more, especially if you have been hanging out here for a while and you don't follow me already on there. I would love to invite you to come hang out because I post on there pretty much every single day and it's really fun. And I will see you guys again in next week's video on Tuesday. Bye guys.